Kevin Walker, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, and I'm excited for this conversation. Excited to learn a little bit more about your background and how you got into owning multiple restaurants and different concepts across those restaurants. And so, excited to learn a little bit more about your journey. But let's jump into it. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into this.
Well, awesome. So I guess kind of since a little kid, I've always been interested in business and entrepreneur. As a little kid, my grandma used to order from this like mail order catalog, and it was called Finger
Nice.
Cut. And whenever she would order, they'd send like seven free gifts, and I would take those gifts and take them to school and sell them to teachers or do whatever I could
Oh,
for the
nice.
money. So I've always kind of had this like entrepreneurial spirit, loving business
Yeah.
and the idea of business. And so I went to school at Trinity Christian College for business. Kind of always knew that that was the path I wanted to go and study entrepreneurship and marketing there. After school, had an opportunity to work in the insurance industry, and so it was kind of actually during school I did an internship there. So never was planning to go into insurance. It just so happened that the internship was the closest to my house and paid the most money, so I went with that as
Yeah.
a college kid would do. And so after that, went from there to an opportunity to go to actually for a small short time. I did a couple of different insurance companies. And then for a small time, I went to a nonprofit called Corporate Chaplains of America. And then from there, got back
Nice.
into business. So I started in business, right after college too. I had some smaller side businesses, had some real estate stuff I was doing. But then, when I left Corporate Chaplains is when I fully went back into business full time and went into restaurant business and a business I never thought I'd be in. I'd actually never really worked in a restaurant before and wasn't a chef, didn't like to
Wow.
cook, but just kind of opportunities came up and found myself in the restaurant business.
Yeah, no, I'd love to learn more about this. I guess what led you to restaurants?
Well, I guess first, my wife, her family was in the restaurant business. And so that
Got
was
it.
kind of the easy in with that. So they had multiple restaurants, her entire family, aunts, uncles, cousins, everything. They were all in the restaurant
Got it.
and multiple restaurants. And so I was able to see, her parents operate their business and see a little bit more of the family operating their business. And an opportunity came up for me to buy a store. And while it wasn't, my first thing I was ever planning on to do, but the opportunity
Yeah.
came and I looked like a good opportunity to me. And, at the end of the day, business is business. Thankfully, I wasn't a chef, so I didn't have to develop the recipes and things like that. That was all done for me already. But the concept of business, I think, could be applied anywhere, whether you're making widgets or whether you're making tacos or smoothie
Yeah.
or a distribution center or whatever. I mean, the principles of business, I think, are all the same. And so I was like, all right, let's take on this challenge. I also love challenges. I'm the guy who's like, all right, there's a challenge. Let's jump in.
Yeah.
I kind of look for challenges. It's kind of fun for me. And so I'm like, oh, let's do this thing I've never done before. I never worked in a restaurant. Let's go run a restaurant. And so we jumped
Yeah.
in and did that. And it's been fun. It's been a wild ride, though. It's been fun.
Yeah. What was the learning curve on that? Like going from, more corporate full-time job to owning a restaurant.
I mean, it was huge. It was different. First, I remember
Yeah.
like thinking, like, what am I doing? I'm working
Yeah.
twice as hard and making half as much. As I,
Sure.
so that was like the first realization that this was a
Yeah.
hard thing. I think
Yeah.
next it was just like, I needed to learn. And so I knew that I didn't know things. And so I sought out, mentors and I went to conferences and I was reading books and podcasts and just doing everything I could
Yeah.
to make sure that I learned what I was doing. And I learned this business so that I could become the best at it. And so I spent a lot of time learning. I just remember the first week, a couple of days, like my wife's family came by to help, and they were there for maybe
Yeah.
the first week. Week number two came by, and I remember one of our chefs, our cooks, came to me and said, "Hey, can you try this? Does it taste okay?" And I was like, I tasted it. I was like, I think so. I'm like, oh, I just add a little bit more salt. Like I didn't know what to say. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a chef. I'm not a cook. I never run a restaurant, and I'm not even Mexican, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and so I was like, I just add a little bit more salt. And so it was funny. I just like I realized I'm like I don't know what I don't know, and I've got to learn what I
Yeah.
don't know. And then just kind of worked on that. And so I also realized a short time after being into it, it wasn't just about the food. It wasn't just about the operations, but there was that whole business side of it too that needed to happen as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. And so when you bought this shop, was it already El Famous Burritos or was it something different and you turned it into that, or what did that look like?
So it's interesting. It was an El Famous burrito, but it had closed.
Okay.
So it was a
Oh,
franchise
okay.
from our family. It was not operated by a family member at that point. And
Okay.
through a series of things, they end up not having operating as El Famous Burrito. They sold the building, and the person who bought the building reached out to one of our family members and said, "Hey, I just bought this building, but I'm not interested in opening a restaurant. El Famous, people loved El Famous here. Would you guys be interested in opening again?" And so the family reached out to me and said, "Hey, this opportunity came up, and are you interested?" I'm like, "Let's do it." And so 2 weeks later, there's a sign on
Nice.
the door, reopening soon, new ownership, coming soon type of thing. And so literally 2 weeks
Yeah,
later. And so I took less
that's awesome.
to think about it. It went from not being a possibility to 2 weeks later, a sign on the door saying, "Hey, we're opening." So I kind of like to jump into
That's
that. I
awesome.
coach, I like the challenges.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned earlier there's some business principles you hold to that are universal and that, you know, and so the challenges don't necessarily scare you off. What are some of those principles that, you've learned along the way?
So I think one of the biggest things is always just a focus on customer. And I really like to say customer. I think of, especially in the hospitality mode, our guests, right? If you think about a
Yeah.
guest coming to your house, like what do? You clean up, you make sure that you have like drinks for them and you have snacks and you have a plan, like, hey, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna talk about this, and everything's comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that same concept that we've looked for, whether it be, in our juice bar or a restaurant with a Mexican restaurant or some other businesses I've done, is really this focus on our customer, our guests. Like they are the number one priority. Without them, there is nothing. And so there's really for me a big focus on them. And then the operations of like, how do we run our business, operate in excellence, making sure
Yeah.
everything's clean, making sure that everything's top quality, making sure we're friendly and inviting and welcoming. And so that's really the things that's really important for us as that aspect of it is the focus on the customer. And then I think also to just operating in excellence, knowing your numbers, understanding the business side of things, because there's lots of restaurants that have failed and lots of chefs that have opened up and they have amazing food. And it's just like, but why didn't they make it? And I think the whole business side of things, and so really understanding and digging into those and making sure that you're financially strong and operations are strong and all the back of house, or not even back of house, but back end things are all taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. It's the same in a restaurant, it's the same in an accounting firm,
Yeah,
right? That's focus on the client. You make sure that they're well taken care of. And yeah, there's the commitment to excellence in everything that you do and tracking those things and tracking, how quickly, even for us, like how quickly are we responding people and how quickly
absolutely.
are we, all of those type of things and really knowing those. I'm curious too. So, I know you're a man of faith. We're part of similar faith organizations. Would love to hear, how has that played a role in your journey for entrepreneurship, maybe your decision to even get into it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you, it's been an interesting journey. I remember 20 years old, out of college, or 21 years old, straight out of college, and I had started a business, doing some real estate. And I really struggled with that question because I remember I had some real estate, a person who wasn't paying rent, and we were looking to evict them. And I just remember her looking at me and saying, "Well, aren't you supposed to be a Christian?" And I
Mm,
was like, "Ooh."
sure.
Like, am I being a bad example? Am I being a bad person? So I had this like struggle in my mind of how do
Yeah.
I have my faith, integrate my faith in my business. Like, I mean, I'm not perfect, but if I'm going to be saying that I'm a Christian, if I'm going to like let people know that, like, I don't want to be a bad example either, right? And so I
Right.
struggled with, I'm like, well, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to be quiet. And not that I was going out like, telling everyone, hey, I'm a Christian. Things come up in conversation, right? And so, but then,
Right.
well, maybe I don't want that to come up in conversation. And so I really struggled with that idea. I will tell you my time when I worked at Corporate Chaplains of America, I met so many great, solid business people who were also strong in their faith. And I was able to really learn how they integrated their faith with their business. There's tough decisions you have to make in business, and there's some challenging things that come up, but you got to do those and be a steward over the business too. And so for us,
Yeah.
it is like our guiding principles. I am by no means perfect. I am far from it.
Sure.
But it's my faith is kind of a guiding principle for us, and we've been included in our mission as well. That we want to honor God in all that we do, is the first part of our mission statement. Um, and so it's utilizing that to as a filter. Okay, so if we're making this decision, that's one of the filters that we go through, right? We have our values, we have our vision, we have our mission, and we have my faith. And again, you don't have to be the same faith to work at our company, and I'm not forcing it on people, but I do let people know, hey, that's part of the principles that I use as I make decisions for our company. So if you wonder why we don't do certain things, that might be reason why, or why we do certain things, that might be part of the reason why. And so we use it
Right.
as kind of like a guiding principle as a filter for what we do. We try to be good examples, we try to be good stewards, and we try to, honor God in what we do. Again, not perfect, but we definitely work hard to do that and make that a part of our business.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I've had some of those same thoughts around integrating the faith of, when it comes to those hard decisions, are you being unfaithful by making this hard decision, or is it right? Because it's just and it's according to a contract, or those type of things. And that's definitely something I think every business owner of faith has to wrestle through. Of yeah, how
Right.
do I really, rectify these things? And so, appreciate you sharing that. To get into, some of the more finance side of your business, would love to just learn from you. And I think this would be helpful for other people too, right? Like, what's been kind of some of the financial strategy along the way? I mean, I know you have, at least last we talked, you had like 6 locations, I'm sure plans for more. What's been some of the strategy to acquire those locations or to, run those well? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think one of the huge things, and so we started with no strategy.
Sure.
I didn't know what I didn't know again, and so I was like, seeking
Yeah.
information, seeking out mentors, doing research, going to conferences, and so we slowly began to add things little by little. And I remember one of the first things that we implemented on the financial side was really measuring and monitoring our prime costs, right? Which is going to be
Okay.
our labor costs and our food costs. Those are really for us the two controllables in the restaurant industry. You can't control your fixed costs sometimes, but these two things move a lot and they're very important and
Yeah.
controllable. And so I remember we actually went to a conference, and I 3 months before like the big part of COVID started, we implemented that. And I honestly truly believe us monitoring and tracking those numbers helped us to make it through COVID because we were aware of what was
Yeah.
happening. We knew what was going on. We knew what changes we needed to make. We knew where we needed to make adjustments. And literally, I was so fortunate and so grateful. I'm like, man, the timing on this was incredible, right? That we started tracking those
Yeah.
things right before. And so then that was like kind of the first step. And so we started tracking the prime costs. And then it's like, okay, from here, where do we go? And what do we learn? And so we went to, inventory and digging into inventory, understanding the how to count inventory and the importance of inventory and the importance of inventory on our prime costs. And so we
Yeah.
dug into that. And then, a few years down the road, it was digging into more cash flow and understanding
Yeah.
that and trying to improve cash flow. And so I think we're in a journey. I don't think that on the financial side, like, and just to be honest, just so you know, like I actually hate the number side of it. I hate putting it together. I hate looking
Sure.
it up. I like to look at them and see them, especially when they're black.
Yeah.
But I don't like putting it together, but it's an important part of the business, right? I have to do that. I have to understand those things in order for our business to be successful. And so I'm on this journey where, I definitely haven't arrived at where we want to be, but I'm for sure not
Yeah.
where we started on this journey. So.
Yeah. No, that's really good. What have y'all put any like systems in place or softwares in place to help you like track some of those things?
Yeah, we have some things in place, and to be honest, some of the stuff has just been through Google Sheets.
Yeah,
We
sure.
there's a ton of softwares out there, and some of them are super expensive and complicated. And so we've just said, hey, let's at some point as we grow. Obviously, I know that we can't keep always doing Excel or Google Sheets, right? We need to move beyond that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that can start with the simple things, right? Like some basic
Yep.
things. So a lot of our prime cost is done through tracking and Google Sheets. We also obviously we use our accounting software as well.
Sure.
It's QuickBooks we're currently using, and that's helped us to be able to pull some numbers together as well. But yeah, utilizing simple things, I think for us, we love to have all the bells and whistles and everything automated, but I just think we're not
Yeah.
there yet. At some point we will hopefully need to be there and utilize some other
Yeah.
and softwares that are out there. But we've stuck with the simple stuff for now.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart. I mean, one thing I'll tell a lot of people is, hey, those softwares are only as good as much as you use them and that you're committed to using them. And that takes time and it takes investment into personnel to use them. And so, yeah, starting with what you have today and just getting to a point where you can see some of those basic metrics that alone can have massive impact, whether that's on spreadsheets, whether that is going for one of the fancy softwares, whatever that looks like. So that's very cool. How do you track that, given that you have so many locations? And do you find maybe that some of those numbers are different? Because I know you also have two different concepts, the El Famous burritos and the juicery. How do you, I guess, kind of manage all of that?
Yeah, so and one of the things working on that too as well and improving. I love sharing some of the things you're asking or answering these questions because it's a process I'm in the middle of. It's a journey I'm on, right? It's
Yeah,
not perfect. So
right.
I can kind of share with people kind of where we're at and where we hope to be. Um,
Yeah,
but I think one of the big things is for us, like I've been trying to schedule time, like where I go through those things on a weekly basis or a daily basis. Some numbers I go through on a daily basis, there's some things I go through on a weekly basis, but actually scheduling it into my calendar because if not, I don't do it. Like life gets busy, things come up. And even
yeah,
within my
yeah,
schedule, sometimes I still miss it, but I'm more consistent at least with it being in the schedule. So we've really made a point to do that. And I think just having calls, like I said, I don't know everything. So meeting with, financial professionals and talking with them, I think is a huge thing because you're going to have more insight than I am on a lot of things. Like I can look at some things, but you're going to see. I remember one time I met with someone. This was just a friend who was helping me out, and he wasn't, our accountant or our CFO or anything like that. But he looked at some of our financials, and he literally was like, "Hey, we need to check out something here. I think you have a problem here, and I think that there might be some theft." And it was in a different store in a different state. And
sure.
he saw that by looking at the numbers. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Like, you're not in one of our
Yeah,
stores, you don't know our business, and you've never even stepped foot in the store. It's in a different state. And I was like, wow. And so, all right, let me dig into it. So I dug into the information that he gave me. And it wasn't that someone was stealing, but they were overstocking and there was tons of products sitting on the
sure.
shelves. But just by looking at the numbers, he saw something was off here and it's with a product and there could be some theft because if we're going through this much and sales are here, and so it was like, wow,
Yeah,
it was just kind of like super amazing
yeah,
that like by looking at the numbers, you could direct your business that way and you could see concerns and
yeah,
problems in the business simply by looking at a balance sheet. Like that was, I mean, it
yeah.
blew my mind, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's crazy what you can determine just from the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's an awesome story, and that's cool that he was able to see that. What would you say, like for your two different concepts? You mentioned like prime cost, for example. Are you finding that the metrics you're targeting for each one are different, or are they relatively similar?
Yeah, for us, I mean, I think they're relatively similar.
Yeah,
They're different models and different concepts, but the target goals, the percentages, I think are pretty similar for both brands. We with extract we adjust slightly in the winter months because it's just a different model in the winter, right? Like there's people you don't want a cold drink as much, but there's also people who say, okay, I'm not coming here for the cold drink, I'm coming here for the nutrition. And so there's a little bit of drop there on that side, but we make adjustments for that. And so, we may have a little bit of a cushion in the winter, and then in the summer, we're a little bit more lean. And so things have to operate more
yeah,
efficiently. So it's kind of knowing the season. So I think in that model, in the sense of, there are different concepts, our targets are pretty similar for, I guess, annually, but we may make adjustments throughout the year of what that looks like and kind of targets to meet each individual business concept. And then within the
yeah.
concept, I do a lot of benchmarking restaurants against each other. And so it's like, okay,
Nice.
if we're able to run this here, why are we not running this number here? Like it's the same food, same concept, same menu, same recipe. What's happening here that's not happening here? So we find like what's our most successful store, and we do have
Yeah,
one that I would say is more successful than the others, and so we kind of benchmark
yeah,
them stores against that, but on a percentage basis because a lot of times, well, managers will say, well, that's not fair. They have higher sales, and that's why that's going to work. And so that's why I like
sure.
things based off a percentage, because percentages don't matter. Like it is a percentage is a percentage. Whether that number changes
Yeah.
top or bottom, the percentage remains the same. And we benchmark a lot against percentages.
That's very insightful. Yeah, that's what we preach a lot as well is establishing those percentages, developing for your concept what you should be targeting. There's some universal ranges, right? But really getting specific on if you're fine dining, that's going to look a little bit different than the fast food. What is that percentage you should be targeting, honing in on it. And then I'm interested if you do this too, but rewarding your managers based off hitting that.
Yeah, and we have a bonus plan set in place for them so that they can be rewarded based off hitting those numbers and hitting those goals.
Yeah.
And there's some motivation for them and some skin in the game as well, to do well. And also just a reward, hey, you do well for us, like it pays off for you. And so we've set some things in place. And it's one of the things I'm actually working on developing more and kind of adjusting more to make that, I guess, the most efficient it can be. Again, it's a learning process. I'm constantly looking to evolve, constantly looking to become better, learn more. And so that's one of the things I'm actually in the process of right now, focusing on how do we make this a little bit better? How do we adapt it? How do we adjust how
Yeah.
this works? And so, yeah, we're working on that right now, but we've got something in place, but looking to make that better.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm curious, so many restaurants have such a challenge finding labor and, retaining labor. Has that been a big challenge for y'all as well?
I would say it's pretty interesting. We've got a lot of long-term employees,
Yeah.
and they've been around for a while. And not all of our stores. I mean, I have one store in particular where I would say the average tenure there is probably 20 years. We've got a lot of people at 30 years, 32 years.
Wow, that's
We've
awesome.
got a handful of people in that 15 to 20-year mark, and a ton of people
Yeah,
in 5 to 10-year mark, which has been something like super fortunate. Like, we try to do the best we can for our employees. You may be able to make more, you might be have more benefits somewhere else, but we really just try to be good to our employees, take care of them. I see my employees as family, and it's interesting. I was like, honestly, when I was in one store, and it's not the same now because I have multiple stores, but when I was in one store, I literally probably spent more time with my employees than I did with my family because there's a lot of hours, the restaurant
sure.
a lot of hours. And so I really see
Yeah,
our employees as family and try to take care of them as much as I can and support them and get to know them and care about them. And I think that
yeah,
goes a long way with our employees staying around. And then for other employees, well, I mean, there's always going to be some turnover. There's people leave, people move, etc. Just looking for the top quality people. But it's interesting. Our interview process is long. And many people don't want to go through it, but I think having people go through that process, you find people who are really interested in working in your concept and not just looking for a job. Because if they're just looking for a job or just looking to pay their bills, they'll do it for a couple of weeks or a couple of days or a couple of months or a couple of years, but then something else comes up and let's just jump here because I can get $1 more there, or I can get 50 cents more, or I can do this over here, I can get another day off. And so
right.
are more, there's not that commitment. But when people have gone through this process, I feel like there's a little bit more commitment. Like if you're willing to seek out the process and come to 2 or 3 interviews for a cook position, it's kind of like
Yeah,
a cashier position. It's like, okay, all right, I'm committed to this. I really want to be here.
yeah,
Otherwise I would not go through this process, right? Because it's not normal.
sure.
Most places you walk in, fill out an application. All right, a couple questions. Okay, you're hired. Start tomorrow, or sometimes start today, right? um,
Yeah, yeah. My first restaurant job would start later today.
yeah. And so,
Yeah,
so we've tried to avoid doing that. And one of the things I tell my managers, like sometimes, like, if someone that comes in to apply, even if we're not hiring, let's interview them because we're looking to build teams, not fill positions, right? So if
yeah,
we can build a team and we find someone who's like really good and they're a good spot for our team, can we find a way to include them into our team and to hire them if they're going to be good for the good of the company, and not just filling
yeah,
a position? So
yeah. That's awesome. And I'm sure, the values you'll have in your business too plays a huge role in people wanting to stick around.
yeah, we hope so. We really try to be good to our employees and just treat them right. Have a fun environment too. Like I'm like, okay, we
Yeah,
work hard and have a high standard. Like that doesn't change. But let's
right.
also enjoy work. We have a big Christmas party at the end of the year. And it's a ton of fun, band and
I've
dance.
seen the pictures.
You
I've
do.
seen the pictures on social media. It looks like
That's
fun.
funny. Yeah, it was a blast. I love to have a good time in Tucson. That's always a part of our parties because I like to dance personally. So yeah, it's
Nice.
always a good
Nice.
time.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think that's, again, another universal business principle, right? Whatever the business is, you treat people well, treat them like family, treat them like you'd want to be treated, and as much as they can control, be pretty loyal
Yeah.
over time, right? And
So
so, that's awesome. Curious, so tough question here, right? What would you say is one of your best and worst decisions, financial decisions?
best and worst. It's an interesting question. So I think the best would be beginning to, when I told you about the prime cost and beginning to track our numbers, beginning
Yeah.
to understand our numbers, and just utilizing those to make decisions in our business.
Yeah.
Not just like, all right, we gotta do this stuff so we can do our taxes in the year, put those numbers in the system, but no, really like digging in, understanding and utilizing that information to like interpret that information to make decisions and to kind of guide what we do inside of our business. And it's one of the things, again, I'm still working on, like, all right, how do we take this information that we have, interpret it and utilize it to become better at what we do, right? So I would think that
Mm.
that's the best one is really like starting to do that. The worst, I think, would be I think jumping in too soon into some things, like I told you, I love challenges. And so sometimes,
Sure.
all right, let's just do it. I know it's hard, but like really like let's model this out. Let's like count the
Yeah.
cost. Let's build the best case scenario. Let's build the worst case scenario. Let's think about if
Yeah.
this happens and thinking about like the worst case scenario. Like you don't want that to happen,
Yeah.
but planning for the worst, hoping for the best, I would say would be kind of one of the things I would say I wish I would have done in some situations and not just jumped in so
Yeah.
into things, but really understanding, okay, here's what's going to happen if this doesn't go well. And if that doesn't go well, like, will we still be okay? Like, are we still going to be able to survive? Would we still be able to weather that storm? And so not doing anything that if the worst case scenario happened, that it would affect our business so much that it would cause a negative impact on the business.
Yeah. 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 No, I think we're wired in a similar way there. Yeah, I do the same thing. I tend to get excited. Oh, there's a challenge. I want to prove to myself that I can go do this and jump straight in without fully counting the cost, like you said,
Yeah.
and really understanding, hey, what is the risk that I'm entering into here?
Yeah.
And what are some very practical things that I can do to mitigate that so
Yes.
that I can realize the best case or at least an acceptable case scenario
Yeah.
and really avoid that worst case scenario. Yeah, taking the time to do that. I've had to learn that lesson as well over time. One of our probably my personal biggest financial mistakes was some real estate that we own and wanting to go into a new venture and quickly selling that real estate. Whereas if I would have stuck with the plan I had made, held on to it, we would have gotten such a better price for it a couple years down the road. It probably could continue to be a rental for us and be very successful, maybe in a short-term rental. And it was in such a desirable location. And so I can't think about it anymore. I
Right.
can't talk about it anymore. It's actually like for my wife and I, off limits topic. We're not allowed to talk about this because we just get too sad. But anyways, yeah. What would you say, for somebody like yourself, you self-proclaimed, don't love the numbers, but recognizes the importance of it. What would you say would be like a very practical first step? Like somebody wants to go track those prime costs. How would they go about doing
So I think the first thing is really like getting the information. Like, so whether it be conferences, whether it be podcasts, whether it be utilizing an accountant, a CFO, a service like yours, to find someone they can partner with and get information. Okay, like what do I need to know? What are those most? Because there's a lot of numbers too. There's
Yeah.
and some of them, depending on your industry, some things are more important than other numbers, and so we can kind of sit and guess. But I feel like if you're not doing it, you've got to utilize those around you, tap into resources around you to find out, hey, like what's important? What should I be looking at here? What's going to be the biggest impact? What's going to make the kind of biggest movers and shakers that I need to really look at for our business and be monitoring and tracking those numbers because it could be overwhelming, especially if you don't like doing it. Like there's a ton of numbers and what does this mean? And this report, and you have balance sheets and you have, income statements, and then you have these other reports and these reports and these reports. And it could be overwhelming. And so it's a lot to say, okay, I'm going to look at all these numbers. I'm going to understand all these
Yeah.
numbers versus saying, okay, let's pick out two things for us. That was labor and prime cost to start with. And let's focus on those two things to begin with. So I think starting small and focusing on maybe 2, 3 critical items that could really drive the biggest impact in your business.
Yeah.
And obviously growing from there, like I told you, we started with that and we went to inventory and then we went to cash flow. And that's kind of where we're at now. And we want to do more with that again as we move down that process and continue to develop and we continue to grow consistently, like digging in more, but starting small, starting with a couple key numbers, key things you can track. So it's not overwhelming. It was helpful for me. So
Yeah. Kevin, I think you secretly might love the numbers. I think you might want to be an accountant one day. Keep going.
Well, it's funny because I don't like putting it together. I do like the numbers. I do like seeing the numbers and understanding the numbers. I just hate the process of putting it together. So if you can put them together and
Sure.
give them to me, I think I do, especially when the numbers are good. I mean, when they're not good,
Yeah, yeah.
not
That's
so
when it's
much.
fun. Yeah. Nice. Well, this has been awesome. What's next for you and the team? What are some of the things y'all are working on now?
Well, so yeah, I think this year we've kind of always kind of had a theme for the year. Like last year was a year of growth. and we had a lot of growth. And so this year has been kind of the year of like foundations. Like, all right, we've had this growth. Let's make sure that everything is good. Let's make sure everything is working. Let's make sure that like all of our core principles, our core beliefs, our core processes, our core procedures are all good. And so this is kind of the year of establishing that, going through, digging in, going under the hood, pulling up the, everything, pulling things out of the way, cleaning things up, looking in there, making sure that everything is operating efficiently, operating smoothly. If we don't have policies and procedures into place, making sure we have those in place and just making sure that that is good. So I think that's kind of the goal for this year. I think for the following year, it would probably be another growth year for us. Okay, what can, and maybe not as aggressive as we've done in the past, but what could that be? What is it? Same store sales? Is it new store? Is it acquisition? Is it
Yep.
organic growth? But we want to focus on growth in that next year and continuing to expand. I've got a ton of energy. I feel like I'm still young.
Yeah.
Debatable depending on who you ask, but I've got a ton of energy and I've got like a lot more goals and a lot of vision for our business and continuing to impact the lives of those around us. I think at the end of the day too, that's why we're in business. Like, it's impact our communities, impact our customers, impact our employees. And so also focusing on that too. How do we do better at that? How do we be better uh, community members, better part of this community, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, very awesome. Well, this conversation has been amazing, a wealth of knowledge. I seriously mean that. There's so many just practical things that myself can implement, that anybody listening can implement. For anybody listening, what's a way that they can help you? Who is somebody maybe you're looking to meet that they can maybe introduce you to, and how would they get a hold of you if that's the case?
Awesome. Yeah, I love meeting as many people as possible. You never know how you can support people and how they can support you. And so we're always looking for people just to connect with in business and talk about, share the journey, talk about business together. I love that. We love catering customers too. So if anyone needs some catering on either
There
side,
you go.
a taco
Nice.
bar or a smoothie bar, or we actually did an acai bowl bar and it was super well received.
Nice.
That's
That's
always
awesome.
good too. And so, yeah, potential customers, potential employees, again, knowing good staff. So if there's someone like, hey, that's because we're always looking to build our team, not fill positions. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, there's a variety of ways. We would love to connect with people, but I think the easiest way probably would be through email. My emails is Kevin at elfamousburrito.net or Kevin at extractjuicery.com. Both those are available and would love to connect with anyone who wants.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you very much for being vulnerable and sharing your knowledge, your financial journey, and appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate everything you're doing in this podcast to definitely help people. And it was a joy. I enjoyed the conversation. So
Cool. Thanks, Kevin.
take care. Bye bye.